Hello everyone, Jimmy from Video Gamers Legends here. Now today we're going to be doing a video where we look at some of the games that I've been playing on quarantine. But before we do that, if you hear and see a heavyweight guy make a funny noise with the word "why," please smash the like button. Whoa! Legends! Welcome back, everyone, and let's dive right into the game, shall we? So one of my favorite games that I started playing on quarantine that I actually got at launch was Resident Evil 3 Remake. Now, Capcom has been killing it with these remakes, and I honestly think it's pretty much because they've been building them from the ground up. And, you know, they've upped the graphics so much that it's so realistic. And, you know, I mentioned in a previous video when I was reviewing my modded Resident Evil console, I mentioned this game before. Go ahead and check out that video if you haven't already. I'll leave a link below. But Resident Evil 3 Remake is definitely action-packed. And it all starts with the intro, which I talked about in that previous video. Now, this has to do with Jill Valentine and Nemesis getting into a tussle, but it's by far probably one of my favorite action-packed intros that I've ever played in a video game, arguably. And just that alone makes it worth buying and honestly worth playing. Now, we obviously got Resident Evil 2 Remake back in 2018, and now we got Resident Evil 3 Remake in 2019.
Really, Jimmy? You want me to edit your videos, but you get your information wrong. Resident Evil 2 Remake came out in 2019, and Resident Evil 3 came out in 2020. You dumbass.
And there's been some leaks of Resident Evil 4 Remake coming. You know, I'd like to know what you guys think about this. Leave some comments below. I honestly, personally, as a Resident Evil fan, I would have liked them to see Code Veronica be done first. Resident Evil 4, to me, personally, I feel like that game alone is great the way that it stands. I mean, there's not really much you could do with that game other than enhancing maybe the graphics. But if you're building the games from the ground up, there might be something that they have up their sleeve. I don't know. Let's talk about it. Let's get the comments percolating. Obviously, they've leaked a lot about Resident Evil 8 2, The Village, which would also be kind of in the first-person perspective as Resident Evil 7, I've heard, too. So Capcom is really killing it, like I said. And, you know, there's a lot to talk about with the Resident Evil series. Now, back to Resident Evil 3 just for a second. There's a lot of negativity about the game being too short, but honestly, I don't feel like that takes away from the game. I think that, you know, there's credibility there, because if you go back to the original version and you go to the remastered version, you know, those games are short as well. So there's nothing wrong with the game being short. The next game that I want to be talking about is Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars that I've been playing on quarantine as well. Now, I had this game when I was a kid. This game comes to us from Square and Nintendo. Square obviously became Square Enix. But this is an example of them two, you know, developers working together back then. And Super Mario RPG was released in March 1996. But the problem is it lived in the shadow of Mario 64, which was released in June 1996. So a lot of people didn't really know about it. Now, it definitely is a game worth playing. Like I said before, I played it as a kid and I loved it. I couldn't put it down. And I actually just beat it the other night. And it is quite a long playthrough. But first of all, the 3-rendered graphics really pushes the Super Nintendo to its limits. So it's a really, really great, gorgeous looking game. And the story is mainly the most compelling part of the game. That's because you run into all these different characters that are really memorable. An example would be Mallow. And this is an example also where humor comes into the game, because Mallow is a Nimbus. He's this cloud-looking character, and when he joins your team, you learn that he actually was raised by a frog and his children of tadpoles. So Mallow actually thinks he's a tadpole throughout most of the game until he finds that out later. So just when you read the dialogue, you know, it adds that that element. But Smithy is the main antagonist, this boss who actually took over Bowser's castle, and Bowser actually joined your team as well. So you gotta find all the 7 stars that are scattered along the map, and then you can gather up enough power so you can beat Smithy at the end. It really is a great game. You know, in terms of the RPG elements, it's got a turn-based fighting system, 3 out of the 5 players at a time. You know, it's really easy to understand. When you want to upgrade your character and you level up, it gives you direction of where you want to go. So, you know, it's definitely worth checking out. So that's what makes it one of my favorite RPGs of all time, but definitely one of my favorite Mario games of all time. Now, before we move on to some of the other games I've been playing, I believe Marty from our VG Legend lot members, one of our members, he wants to tell us some games he's been playing. So, hey Marty, what have you been playing? We want to know what's going on in your video game world.
Hey guys, welcome back to VG Legends. Yeah, so games I've been playing, Just Cause 4. Love that game because like you get a bunch of guns, you get to blow shit up all the time. Here's the weapons case. Go over here, pick it up, just pick it up, blow shit up, man. You know, and you know I know it's a little older game, but I've been playing Doom, and I love that game because it's real fast action, and you get to blow shit up. It's great. What else have I been playing? I've been playing a little bit of Minecraft, but, you know, I don't really blow shit up. But you can make dynamite. I'm not that far into the game yet, but eventually I'm going to make some dynamite, and I'm going to blow shit up. Yeah. And I'm going to blow shit up. Woohoo! That's about it. Make sure you smash that like button, guys. And subscribe. See you later.
All right, the next games, plural, that I'm going to talk about is I've actually been playing a series, and this has been taking up most of my time through the quarantine so far, and that's the Mass Effect series. And I got it on the Xbox 360. We have Mass Effect 2, and Mass Effect 3 here. It's funny because I've had these games in my collection for a really long time, but I never got around to playing them. And I love the Xbox 360, one of my favorite systems of all time. But it's funny because this game, I've heard so much good things about it. I was like, oh, you know what, better time than the quarantine to, you know, start firing them up. But I started obviously with the first title, and now I'm into the second installment, and I can't wait to get to the third because I want to see what's going on. But, you know, I am glad that I decided to play these games because I am blown away. First of all, they're space adventure RPG games. So anything that has to do with space and, you know, fighting aliens and using ships and that sort of, you know, combat in space and that sort of thing, I'm drawn to that. And it kind of reminds me actually of Star Wars and a mix between Star Wars and Star Trek. And I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I love Star Trek as well. So that makes it even more better for me to play. But the story is what really, really grabs me. Now, the first game is amazing. I believe it was released in 2007. And this comes to us from BioWare. Now, you can either be this character, John Shepard. Now, he's a commander, you know, or you can play through him throughout the very first game and then into the second game. But you can also develop your own character if you want, which I thought was a really nice touch. But I decided to just go right into it and jump in with John Shepard. And he's a great character. There's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, you have to talk to a lot of different NPCs so you learn about these different aliens and these different factions of aliens throughout the game. And since, I'll give you a little bit of the story, since humans have been able to develop and become aware of interstellar travel, they're able to travel the galaxy, and that's how you come in contact with all these different aliens, these different species, and you learn about them by, like I said before, talking to the different NPCs. Now, in terms of the combat, it's really easy to understand. It's straightforward. The only thing I didn't like about the first game, though, is it seemed a little bit choppy when you're switching from different weapons, or you're actually, you know, dodging things or actually hiding behind things in combat. But they definitely cleared that up in the second game, which I thought was a nice touch. And I like third-person shooters to begin with. I can go back to games like the old Ghost Recons or, Gears of War or Army of Two. There's something about the third-person perspective that I just like a little bit better than the first perspective. I like to be able to see the whole screen and see what's going on. So that made it more intriguing for me to play as well. But in terms of the story, there's an antagonist named Saren, and what Shepard does is he becomes a Spectre, which is this all-time, higher ranking human in the galaxy, and so he pretty much do whatever he wants. And you gather up this team and you fly in this ship called the Normandy, and you go on a mission to stop Saren. Now, Saren is a Turian, and what he wants to do is he wants to summon these beacons. He wants to go and find these beacons around the galaxy so he can summon this big machine called a Reaper that he wants to wipe out everything in the universe. Really great story. And a great part of the story is the decisions you make when you're talking to NPCs definitely reflects on what happens in the game. And there's been some, mouth-drawing parts where some of your members on my team have died based on the decisions that I've made. So the second game's great. And the first game was great. The second game's even better. I cannot wait to get into the third installment. So if you haven't played these games, definitely check them out. All right, the last game I'm going to be talking about is Ken Griffey Jr.'s Winning Run for the SNES. Now, I had this game when I was a kid, and I logged very many hours into it. It's a prequel to Major League Baseball, featuring Ken Griffey Jr. on the Nintendo 64. Two of my favorite baseball games of all time. Now, I'll tell you right now, I'm missing me some baseball. I'm a huge baseball fan. I live 2.5 hours south of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and when I was a kid, I used to go to old Three River Stadium with my dad and my uncle, and I used to look down in left field and look at Andy Van Slyke. And I miss baseball. I want it back. So this is the perfect game to talk about. Now, this is a great Major League Baseball simulator game. Because of the lack of Major League licensing, Ken Griffey Jr. is the only real baseball player on the game, which kind of gives it a little lack feel, but it doesn't take away from anything of the game. In terms of the presentation, the graphics, it's definitely the best graphical baseball game you're going to get on the SNES. Definitely pushes the system to its limits. The stadiums look unbelievable when you're in that view of pitching or even batting and you see the backgrounds of these stadiums. Wrigley Field would be a good example. That's a really iconic stadium. It looks to part, and being a Pirates fan, Old Three River Stadium looks great as well. In terms of the different modes you can do a franchise mode. You can play a season, 26, 52, or 162 games. You can do an all-star mode where you actually could do a home run derby or just a World Series, or you can just do a single game mode where you can just play an exhibition game. The gameplay is great as well. It's really easy to understand. You only press B to pitch or to hit, and you use the directional in different directions based on where you want to hit the ball or based on different pitches that you want to throw while you're pressing B. And when you hit the ball, and let's say you're playing in the field, it goes down to a top-down view, which I really like. And, you can dive for the ball, and there's a lot of sense of realism there, because when you hit a ball, when a ball's hit to you, the computer hits to you in a location, you dive for the ball, it looks like the ball was going to be actually where it was going to go, and there's no choppiness and frame rate. It's really, really great. The only problem I have with it, it's really hard. It's actually really challenging. It's funny because the computer gives you a really tough time. You play these games when you're a kid, and you can master them. Then you come back and play them in your adult. You're like, oh man, these are hard as fuck, and you really have a tough time playing them. But I found myself always wanting to be Seattle, because the Seattle Mariners, because Ken Griffey Jr. is really good on this game, and every time I get up to the plate with him, it seems like I'm hitting a home run or getting near one, so it gives me a better chance to win the game. But definitely check it out. Definitely my favorite baseball game, one of them of all time, that and the one for Nintendo 64, and I've logged very many hours in it since I picked it up, and I'll still be playing it.
Hey guys, and forgot to tell you guys that I think it's a pretty cool thing that I used to be the drummer for Santana. We had some wild, crazy times. Yeah.
Legends!